So I want to bring in juvenile defense attorney Michael Gottlieb to help us make sense of this. Michael, thanks so much for coming on. The sheer brutality of this crime is kind of hard to fathom because not only did this 16-year-old kill her own mom, but then she stabbed her mom's boyfriend almost to death. That's the allegations, and then finished him off with a bullet. Now, clearly, she has some of these issues with her mom, and as has been reported with this relationship. And there, of course, are a lot of teens who get angry with their parents, but anything like this you've seen before that would push someone to do something like this, it's kind of hard to make sense of.
Well, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's an unusual situation because number one, she's so young. Number two, as you said, there's a seemingly loving relationship on Facebook, but we all also know how social media can appear to put forward a relationship, especially a family relationship that doesn't really exist. It's a crime where it's kind of shocking. It shocks the conscience that she would lay in wait for her mother, for the mother's boyfriend, armed with both a gun and a knife, stab and shoot them, and then try to cover it up. It's kind of an unusual case. It has a lot of elements to it, and I can see some potential defenses as well.
You know, I've covered cases before where the perpetrators, so the alleged perpetrators, stage a scene. It was a robbery, it was a burglary, they're the victim in it. But it's something, I think, on the part of law enforcement to look at the evidence, the actual physical evidence at the scene and say, something's not adding up. Because generally speaking, wouldn't you take the 16-year-old's word for what happened in this case?
I think law enforcement's responsibility is to obviously take her word. But in a situation like this, she's the most likely suspect. She's the person who's there. And the evidence easily and clearly doesn't add up. I mean, as a 16-year-old, she didn't even think to turn off the home recorder. That would be the first thing that they're going to look for in an allegation of a home invasion and a burglary is we may have videographic evidence of who's done this. And when that doesn't add up, and there were bloody shoe prints of hers found in or near the crime scene, which, of course, if she found the bodies, that makes sense that you would have those. But at the same point in time, you're talking about seasoned investigators who are probably 20 years on the force, typically a homicide. They're going to see quite easily that her initial story doesn't really meet the scientific evidence they're seeing at the crime scene.
Are you surprised she allegedly confessed to the whole thing? And what would be some ways that a defense attorney can try to make sure that alleged confession doesn't see itself into a courtroom?
Well, so confessions are double-edged swords, obviously. If you can't get rid of the confession, and confessions have to be knowing, intelligent, and voluntary, and if you can't throw out the confession, you want to use it to show mitigation, that she initially realized what she had done was wrong. Now, I understand mitigation is typically for sentencing, but here, it's not a whodunit. She confessed that she did it. What you would want to try to do is get away from first-degree murder and see if you could get a lesser offense, whether it's second-degree murder or third-degree murder or even a manslaughter. So you want to argue, while she planned this, while she perpetrated it, she was remorseful and cooperative with the police and is deserving of a break. And if you can get that in the guilt phase, then you can get even a further break, perhaps, at sentencing.
Hey, I want to take a sidebar from Sidebar to thank one of our incredible sponsors who helps make this show happen, Blue Land. Now, we are in this new culture where we're finally recognizing how important it is to eat clean, to use clean products, because new studies are telling us we're finding out some alarming things. Like apparently we're eating and drinking roughly a credit card's worth of plastic a week. How disgusting is that? Well, that is why I'm so excited to talk to you about Blue Land. And here's the thing. I was using Blue Land even before they become a sponsor. That's how much I believe in what they're doing. Their whole goal is to eliminate single-use plastic. Their containers, their bottles, they have this really cool, sleek design. Looks great on my counter. I have their hand soap, pods for the laundry, toilet, dishwasher. My house is filled with this stuff, and it's all made with clean ingredients. I love the idea that I'm using something that's not only better for me and my family and the planet, but it takes care of the job. I'm not sacrificing quality. Just fill it up with water, drop in the tablet, you're ready to go. Does a fantastic job. I don't have to go out and buy bulky cleaning supplies anymore. It's so easily refillable, by the way. Refills start at just $2.25, saving so much money here. You can even set up a subscription or buy in bulk for additional savings. Not surprising that Blue Land is in over 1 million homes, including mine. And Blue Land has a special offer for Sidebar's audience. Right now, you can get 15% off of your first order by going to blueland.com/sidebar. You won't want to miss this. Blueland.com/sidebar for 15% off. That's blueland.com/sidebar to get 15% off. In your practice, do you generally see people of this age who commit horrific crimes confess to this? I mean, do you see it generally more with younger people than you do with adults?
It really depends. I mean, sometimes it depends on what they're looking for. Sometimes kids who commit these crimes want to be known, want to be famous, and so they're going to confess because it gets it out there. We've seen that happen before. Also, I think when you murder your mother, even though you were in the moment mad, I think there's got to be a great sense of remorse and regret and guilt. And when law enforcement comes and you know you're caught, you want to tell on yourself because it's a huge weight off your shoulders.
What about a mental health defense? And I know the facts are quite limited at this time. You haven't had a chance to really speak to this. You haven't had a chance to speak to this defendant or understand more of the circumstances. But are there potential mental health defenses that could work in her favor given the facts that we know so far?
So my inclination is to say there's definitely not a sanity defense, meaning I don't think that she's going to be able to pull off I was insane at the time. It's very goal oriented. It was thought out. It was planned. It was premeditated. She stopped in the middle, reloaded the gun. So I don't think we're going to have a sanity defense. In terms of whether or not she has some kind of diminished capacity, here's a child who was maybe tormented by her mother's relationship. The child is also, and I use the word child because she's 16 years old. The United States Supreme Court has said that our minds don't mature until the age of 24. So I do think that there is a quasi mental health defense in terms of she's transitioning from female to male. This is a person who's confused, who's clearly not getting along with her mom, doesn't approve of her mother's relationship. I think you can work elements of a mental health defense into the defense here. And again, it's going to be for mitigation. But I don't know that it's a defense that's going to get her a free pass.
I think for me, the thing that's most chilling is the welcome home, right? She's allegedly waiting with the gun and the knife. Welcome home works both ways, right? It can show this kind of premeditated aspect of it, but it also shows someone maybe not in their right mind. I mean, it is just, I mentioned it like a horror movie. It's terrifying to think about.
It's terrifying, but I think if you also look at that, to me, that's an expression of you're getting what you deserve. And it's kind of like you've tormented me for so long. You've picked on me for so long. Welcome home. Here's what you're getting. I want you to see and know. And I think that in that, you could have either post-traumatic stress or acute traumatic stress based on, and again, I don't know her full confession, but based on her confession, she wasn't getting along with the mother. And maybe she wanted to go out with the parents that night. Maybe she wanted to be with her mother that night. And the mother went out with her boyfriend and then came home. It's kind of a welcome home. I see it as severe aggravation in her mind. I don't mean aggravation in the sense of an aggravating factor, but it's severe torment to this poor child.
Do you think that she will be tried as an adult for this crime? And I imagine her defense counsel will try every which way to keep this within juvenile court, right? So if you could walk us through what the differences between both are and what you think the likelihood is that this could be tried in adult court.
Well, there's criteria in Florida statute for waiving her into the adult system. They have to have a hearing within 7 days. There's due process involved. But I think unquestionably, given the nature of the offense, she's going to be waived into adult court. In adult court, she would most likely be facing murder in the first degree. And thankfully, the United States Supreme Court has said that juveniles in the state of Florida, actually throughout the country, juveniles can no longer face mandatory life sentences. So she'd have an opportunity for a lesser sentence than life. And if it's longer than 25 years, a review at 25 years. In the juvenile system, she won't be facing life in prison. She'll be facing some type of juvenile incarceration, some kind of juvenile detention, I believe up until the age of 21.
And go back to what you said before. Do you think that there's a Do you think there's a likelihood that while she's tried for first-degree murder, and it's a capital felony, but as a minor, she's going to be exempt from that? Do you think that first-degree murder sticks? Do you think a plea deal would be put on the table? Do you think it's appropriate given the circumstances of this case?
I think when we talk about what's appropriate, because she's a juvenile, I think that you get a significant amount of sympathy from a jury. And when we pick juries in cases like this, we always tell the juries not to have sympathy. But you can't help but have sympathy for a child who's going through a hard time with their parent, a child who is locked out of the parent's room and had to break into the parent's room. I mean, that shows a great divide inside the home. Now, maybe that was safe storage of the weapon, but there's an easier way to have safe storage of a weapon. But it really shows a compartmentalized relationship. And I think as a defense attorney, that's the kind of spin that you want to put on this, that it wasn't Facebook, but it was Fakebook. And it was a relationship out there for the community to see that wasn't real. And here was a child that wasn't accepted at home, wasn't allowed in the mother's bedroom, that was left behind at night. I think there's a lot of meat on the bone for a defense attorney to really spin that this was a poor child who was somewhat living a pathetic life, struggling, with her identity issues and being ignored by the mother. And all of that, when you can paint that picture, I think it's easy to get away from the planned premeditated murder and get it more into a second-degree murder, which is, a depraved mind, a depraved heart. Mm-hmm. And there, the world of mitigation is much more open to you for sentencing in a lesser offense.
And by the way, my understanding is, unfortunately, this is actually the second incident in Palm Bay in a week in which a child shot and killed a parent. Is this becoming, I hate to say it, is this becoming more common, or is this something we've seen for years? And these are just, unfortunately, two incidents that happened kind of back to back.
I'd be guessing to say if I knew the real answer, but we all know when we see these things, whether it's in the media or social media, it gives young, impressionable minds an idea. Oh, well, if this person did it, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can get away with it. So it's hard to say yet. Two is not necessarily a trend, but it is troubling. And I think it's something that we need to address in the community with kids today and how they deal with their issues.
Well, we know that 16-year-old Julia Egler is currently being held in custody at the Juvenile Detention Center, and there's a delinquency hearing that's scheduled for later this month to decide whether she will be tried as an adult. Michael Gottlieb, thank you so much for coming on, breaking down what is a very, very disturbing case for us.
Thanks again for having me on.